Welcome back. We've been doing a bit of travelling around the countryside lately and talking to a lot of people, and the reaction to our Giltraps Collector Car Series has been universally good, and we'll be continuing that on in the coming year. On the 24th of September this year, Giltraps hold their spring auction at their Brickyards premises on Ferry Road at Southport. Now, there'll be about 150 vintage, veteran, classic and collector cars at the auction, and the centrepiece will be this absolutely superb Cord 810. Now, this is a real treat for the automobile buffs. Errett Laban Cord ran the Auburn Car Company in Auburn, Indiana in the early 30s. Now, he was in production with Cord motor cars as well as Auburn and Duesenberg in 1931-32, and then in 1936-1937. The Cords were designed to fit into a price bracket, if you like, between the Auburn and the really upmarket Duesenberg. Now, these cars had a lot in common with the cars which were being designed and built in Europe and France, the upmarket cars, France and Britain at that particular time. The Vauxhall, Bentley and Rolls-Royce in Britain, and the Bugatti, Talbot Lago and Delahaye in France, as well, of course, as Mercedes in Germany. And they really were superbly upmarket, and the Cord 810 is an excellent example. It's very similar to the Talbot Lago and Delahaye's, which was designed for those companies by Fagoni in Europe at that time. And the styling, it really is upmarket, but that's not the only innovative and interesting thing about the Cord 810. There were 2,320 Cords of all models through 4 body styles built over the 4-year production run, which leads us to believe that there were about 300 to 320 Cord 810s built in 1936. That's worldwide. In 1937, they added a supercharger to the V8, which boosted the horsepower from 125 to 195, and that must have certainly yielded a tremendous increase in an already sparkling performance. Now, the car is extremely innovative. Its styling I've already mentioned. It says power, it says speed. It's conservative but absolutely superb in the way in which it's executed, and this particular car is a magnificent example, worth, by the way, around about $100,000 to $130,000. By the way, the purchase price back in 1936 for this car was about $2,500, so you can see how prices have appreciated in that time. There are only 2 Cord 810s in Australia, to our knowledge, and probably only about 18 or 20 left in the world. Now, the car, apart from its really upmarket and beautifully executed styling and coachwork, also is very innovative mechanically. Come and I'll show you under the bonnet and explain some of its features. The engine is a 3.5 litre side valve alloy headed V8. Fairly conventional in its overall layout, although I suspect it's a fairly wide angle V8. The distributor comes up out of the front of the block on a post out of the valley there, and the carburetor is mounted on a beautifully done cast alloy manifold feeding down into the cylinders from the inside of the cylinders. The exhaust also comes up alongside the intake port, so a little different to the normal V8 layout that we're used to as far as modern V8s are concerned, but nevertheless an extremely smooth and powerful engine, built, by the way, by Lycoming, who built a series of 4, 6 and V8 engines for American car manufacturers right through the 20s and the 30s until they converted to aircraft engine manufacture during the beginning years of the Second World War. Now, one of the most unusual aspects of the V8 when you first look at it is the fact that the generator is mounted on the back of the block and is driven by a pulley from the flywheel. The reason for that is, on closer examination, that the car is actually front-wheel drive, and down in the front here there is a cast iron gearbox which is effectively a transaxle driving the front wheels. Now that is quite an innovation for the 1930s. There had been front-wheel drive cars built in the teens during the First World War and also in the 20s, but this was one of the first high-performance general consumption front-wheel drives to be truly successful on the world market. Beautifully engineered, the gearbox is 4-speed, and because of the fact that the car has been converted from left to right-hand drive, it is a right-hand gear change. Originally, the Cord 810 had electrically actuated gear selection. I don't quite know how that worked, but I suspect that it was done through solenoids. This particular car has been converted to full manual operation, which obviously enhances the overall reliability. Now, this certainly was a breakthrough in engineering, because using a V8 which generally has a pulse, we're all used to V8s idling away with a slight roll or rumble to them. Due to that, and the fact that you had to have constant velocity joints to drive the front wheels, it was difficult to engineer a car which was smooth with a V8, let alone with a front wheel drive. So Gordon Burig, who designed the car, certainly made some technological breakthroughs in the actual basic mechanical design of the car, and was able to design all of those factors into the car extremely successfully, because it's one of the smoothest cars on the road that I've ever driven, particularly for its era. Suspension was by a transverse leaf spring and trailing arms, again something of innovation, and certainly helping to maintain the overall steering geometry. The interior is fairly conventional for a car of this era. Obviously, the front wheel drive completely eliminates a transmission hump, which means that you could sit 3 people fairly snugly across the car, but you can seat no more than that. Effectively, it is a straight 2-seater. There's a tremendous array of instruments, unusually laid out and presented in a beautifully done machined alloy panel there. As I said, the car has been converted from left to right-hand drive and has a right-hand gear shift. Now, on either end of the instrument panel, there are 2 little crank handles. And if you read the sign, it says headlamps turn. If you turn those crank handles, you actually wind the headlights up out of the front guards. Now, that was an innovation which I didn't see come back again until the Lotus Elan of the early 60s, and we're only now seeing it on some of the upmarket Japanese cars, and particularly Porsches. So again, Gordon Burig was right there as far as technical innovation is concerned back in 1936. The hood itself is quite small, and in contrast to most hoods on cars of this era, certainly enhances the overall lines of the car when it's up. Now, Burig was going to have nothing to do with the hood sticking out in the breeze behind the driver and passenger when the car was driving along. So he made a special lift-up panel behind the seats, which lifts up, the hood folds down underneath it, it drops back down and completely conceals the hood. As far as the after end of the car is concerned, in contrast to the front mudguards, which effectively are separate, just like wheel spats from a large aircraft of the day, beautifully designed and aerodynamically styled, the rear guards actually integrate with the rear of the body, and a fairly conventional but very long and low roadster back with quite a cavernous boot with a lid which actually hinges from the front. Now, it's an absolutely superb design exercise. Its technological innovation makes the car fascinating to look at. It's a great pleasure and a privilege to be able to drive a car that's as rare as this, and I certainly have appreciated that over the last couple of days while I've been driving her around and getting used to her. And she'll be, as I said, the centrepiece for the spring Giltraps Collector and Classic Car Auction, which will be held on the 24th of September at Southport. We'll be back right after this break.